Welcome to the Game 9010, and also welcome to Long Beach. Please pardon the sound of construction that you may hear coming through the audio because there's a building being demolished nearby. So in our podcast, we're going to deep dive into the insights and experiences of a phenomenal figure in sport and performance. And today we're privileged to meet with Coach Andy Sythe. I'm your host, Kayla Delano. Tell you a little bit about Coach Andy Sythe's bio and what brings him to our studio today. All right, so he has won the award 9 times as the Big West Track and Field Coach of the Year, 8 times with the men's and 1 time with the women. I'm just quickly going to list the years: 2006, 2008, 2011, 2013, 14, 15 and 16, and 2018 and 2019. That's with the men's team. And he led the women's team to their first Big West Championship in the year 2018. I'd also like to mention a couple of other accomplishments. So while coaching your athletes, they've established at least 85 indoor and 47 outdoor school records. You went to San Diego State and graduated with honors with your degree in physical education, along with some of your master's studies. And you were hired as a head coach at Long Beach State University in fall of 1989 as the youngest NCAA Division I coach hired in the United States. And I also have here that you played soccer and football in high school.
Yeah, I participated in a few things. Definitely being well-rounded, I think, helped with my experiences.
That's amazing. Thank you for bearing with me while we covered some of those accomplishments. That's really exciting.
Thank you.
So maybe, I know that you have a coaching history, so I would like to even go back before that because you knew early on that this was your passion, actually. Mm-hmm. So can you tell us about that, please?
Well, as an athlete experiencing sport, I really have to say that, I enjoyed everything that I did. I didn't feel like I had a favorite, but certainly as an athlete, I experienced the most success in track and field. And we tend to gravitate towards the things that we do well in, and sure. And having been successful in all 3 and recruited in all 3, certainly I could have gone a lot of different directions. Mm-hmm. But as a track athlete, I have to say that my experience was connected through my coaches. And I've been blessed, absolutely blessed with probably the very best coaches you could find anywhere.
Wow.
Along the way. And so my experience with the sport was connected through them. Mm-hmm. And having the great leadership and the care, that I received during those times and the experiences that resulted from that, yes, I certainly, was leaning a lot more on the sport of track. And so I started coaching a little bit too. And there's a little history teaching and coaching in my family, so there's a lot of that with my parents and generations of that prior to that. And I don't know if that influenced me, but I certainly loved it. And coaching youth track was my first, hands-on experience. So I was a high school athlete coaching youth, ages 14, 15, right in there, and really loved doing that. So I knew then that's what I wanted to do.
That's awesome. And your family's history in coaching also, were they volunteer coaches or did they do that professionally?
So my dad, he was a Navy guy. And
okay.
So, stationed on the USS Randolph, he was very involved with the physical education aspect of things. Mm-hmm. And so he organized sports. He helped coach sports. He participated in sports, and he was successful himself. And then my mom's been a teacher. Her mom was a teacher. It just has been passed down through generations. And so, throughout all of that, they were professional, but I think it was out of passion that they did it. It wasn't out of pay.
Wow. So their heart was in it. That's wonderful. And I love that you brought up the military aspect because there has been quite a lot of discussion over coaches leading in a militaristic style, as opposed to some of the trends of parenting that have been less, what do they call that, corporal punishment? And those discussions have been really strong, especially around the topic of youth sport. If you come to a group of kids who are playing soccer or baseball or football and they're very militaristic, that it sucks the fun out of the experience. So how has that kind of shaped you, actually having a militaristic coach, physical mentor in your life?
Well, I will say that that my parents as a whole let me have those experiences and be my own experience. Have that experience for myself. So they weren't instructing me. They weren't telling me how to do things. They weren't, trying to influence that. And so from that standpoint, I got to be my own person. I didn't have to have that guidance. But as we continued on, in sport, it was the coaches that I worked with that really had that major influence. But it was through their kindness, their generosity, a lot of generosity in the times I've been in sport where people were very giving and helpful. And so I think my parents probably also didn't have a lot to say about it because they knew I was in good hands.
Oh, cool. That's really neat. So, since you realized early on that coaching was your passion, did you actually articulate a philosophy?
Oh, I was figuring it out on the fly.
Okay.
Having done some sports biomechanics work in my master's at San Diego State, that's an area I've really been interested in. So technique is, to me, having the eye for that, the passion for it. Producing force through certain positions and actions and things like that are a thing that I feel, are my gifts. And so I guess really where I'm going with that is that was really what I wanted to do in that relationship with the athlete and helping them improve and seeing that improvement was what it was about.
Yeah.
Coaching over the years has evolved dramatically, though. And so at this level, not at the youth level where I started, but at the level I'm at now, there are so many other factors. There's the administrative side, there's the rules side, there's so many different things that are involved with it that, when you talk about sucking the life out of you, when you have that militaristic, attitude, well, a lot of that has ended coaching careers. Not because that they couldn't follow the rules, but they just got tired of them. And so I know some great coaches that got out early just because, so much of the work is no longer the coaching and the relationships, it's all this other stuff.
Wow. So it sounds like you found a way to preserve that that generative feeling, that passion. You've been able to maintain it over 32 years at Long Beach State.
Yeah, well, I think what really helps with that is that relationship you do have with the student athlete. And I don't want to say, getting to know them too much or anything like that, but it's the attitudes that they bring, it's the differences, it's the unique challenges that everyone brings to the table that keep it ever changing and ever dynamic. And so that part is the rewarding part for me. I also like administrative work. It's not like I don't. It's just that there's so much of it that it never ends, and it's always surprising you with something else. I guess the one thing that's not a surprise is there's going to be a surprise, and we know that we may be going. You show up to work one day and you're going left, and then all of a sudden you have to turn right really quick because of a direction that you're pulled to because of something, whatever it may be.
That sounds like a great mindset, though, that you're ready to be adaptable, and also that you embrace the fact that how can you excel at what you're doing without the administrative support? So you're finding value in all of the pieces.
Oh, it's all important. I mean, getting somebody from the start line to the finish line involves a lot of moving parts. And it also involves a lot of people. And, the common phrase that you hear out there is it takes a village. Yeah. And so we're working also in a dynamic situation with a lot of caring people in an administrative situation that they're putting themselves out there to help someone get that degree, to help them get to the finish line or to get them on the podium. So very
cool. Can you tell us some of the stories? So you said when you got to Long Beach State, it was not like a cushy picnic. You really had to fight your way through there. So can you kind of give us a story of how, you arrived and your work was ahead of you?
So I'll need to qualify that before I get into, talking about the have-nots, okay? When I was at San Diego State, I began to look for other options. And only because I was a volunteer that, pay would be nice, but I was willing to do it. The one thing that I wanted was more work. I wanted more engagement in the process. I wanted to recruit. I wanted to fundraise. I wanted to do a lot of things because my goal was to be a head coach one day, and I wanted those experiences. And those opportunities were not there for me at my alma mater. So I was very grateful for the opportunity, and I learned a lot during that period of time, but I wanted more. So I explored the options of other institutions, other locations, and had a lot of people, again, who helped me get to where I was that were willing to help me go farther. And ultimately, it was a conversation with my athletic director at San Diego State, Fred Miller, who is a mover and shaker in the sports world. And he told me that going to Long Beach State would be a very good choice. It was one of my options. I had other people pointing me in that direction because of the head coach then, Ralph Lindeman, was considered to be a great mentor. So that combination and the fact that he was allowing me every opportunity to do whatever I wanted to do from the standpoint of coaching, that I accepted the position, and it was the lowest paying position out of all of them that I had options to go to.
Oh, wow.
So I had actually just recently been hired to coach high school as a head coach. I was offered a position overseas. I was offered an opportunity to go to another state, and there was one other I can't recall. To stay at San Diego State on a paid position. And it all happened within a month, a very quick turnaround. So I literally went on vacation and came back and started a new job. But
to have that many offers.
Well, yeah. I mean, none of them were great paid positions, but, they were opportunities. And so I took the one that was going to give me the option to grow more and more quickly. So I had to quickly enroll at Long Beach State. And I met the head coach, Ralph Lindeman, when I was on my way back from vacation, back to San Diego. I stopped in Long Beach, and I met him. His wife was in the office, and he said, "Here's the keys, and I'll see you in a month." And
that doesn't happen every day.
Yeah, so Ralph was coaching the South Korean Olympic team hurdlers at that time. He was basically, hired to be their coach, and so he went to the Seoul Games.
Wow.
And so I literally was running the ship with no real experience because I hadn't received the administrative side at San Diego State. But it was a sink or swim, on the fly, thrown into the fire type.
You got everything
situation.
you asked for.
I did.
Is there a situation where I could do everything?
That was
it was tailor-made.
So, took advantage of that. I drove the cross-country team, to camp in Arizona. We did that, came back, developed some good bonds with the group, and started up, coaching. And Ralph was everything I had expected and everything I had heard. And so as a great mentor that he gave me a lot of things to do. I was able to coach a lot of different areas and assist him in areas that he directed. And at the end of the year, we had just finished placing second at the conference meet, and Ralph was selected Big West Coach of the Year that year. And then a couple of weeks later, he informed me that he was accepting and taking a position at the Air Force Academy. Now, he's been there since. He's been selected to be a coach on the Olympic staff since. And he is also one of the foremost, in coaches in the country. So not unexpected, but very much the timing of that was. And so I applied for the position. I was interim head coach throughout the entire summer and went to my second cross-country camp with the team with no distance coach, on hand. And that was in August, and I found out on that trip that I was hired as the head coach. So, it was, I don't know, like you said, maybe it was meant to be. I think, considering what was going on at Long Beach at that time, which we'll get into now, is we didn't have a track facility at that time. We were getting a new one, but it would be ripped up the entire year. We didn't compete on the facility my first year because it was in such bad shape. I think we had a total of 35 uniforms, and we had 35 members on the team. But when the next year came, when I started as head coach, I had recruited enough to have a team of 100.
Wow, that's phenomenal growth.
But we still had 35 uniforms.
Oh, no.
So we didn't have enough sweats for the team, and we would go to meets, and I'd send them in. I'd go, set up camp, I'll come in and find you. And I'd walk in, I couldn't find my team because we were wearing red, blue, green, brown, gold, whatever it may be. And I remember vividly at Northridge one time for an invitational that I literally lost my team inside the stadium because I couldn't recognize the colors. And,
Panic.
it was one of those things where, you grow from it. Drank a lot of caffeine that year. Had some results from that I've not since touched caffeine. And so what I would say is that, you just had to work hard, and people say smoke and mirrors, and you just try to make the best out of it. 2 years before I got there, they had dropped the men's team. So there was the stigma that, they're going to drop the program.
Oh.
They're going to drop the program. And you heard it all the time on the recruiting field. And so...
So how did you get those numbers?
Well, I just worked at it. I didn't, I didn't feel that the program was going to be dropped, and nobody else felt it was going to be dropped. It was solid, it was stable, but, sometimes that's just language that you use to put doubt in somebody's head to consider maybe coming to their school. So,
rumors.
But the fact of the matter is I couldn't bring them onto a facility because it was horrible, literally, just one of the worst I've ever seen.
Oh my gosh.
And we just did with what we could, but we did it with energy.
Okay.
And so I think the energy helped a little bit. And then when we brought in those 100 people, I will have to say I was a little over my head.
Okay.
So with all the individuals there needing coaching, and we didn't have hired coaches on staff really to fill all the positions.
I wondered that as well. How do you man 100 people?
So you stagger your day.
Okay.
And so the cross-country team worked out in the morning, and I coached the throwers as well. And that was from noon to 2, and from 2 to 4 I coached the jumpers, and then we hired a sprint coach. So we had a staff of 2.
Oh.
And we made it work.
It's exhausting.
We had some success, we did some things, and that was fantastic. But that also was not just because of the coaching, it was the great athletes that we brought in. We had some pretty good people. And I will have to say that probably some of my strongest bonds and relationships that I have with athletes that I've coached were from those first years. And that's when the struggle was real. That's when, we were all in it.
Yeah. Like grab by the shoulders.
Yeah.
I got you. Don't think.
So I think, maybe there's something to that, when you go through a life traumatizing experience, not that was, but, they say that your bond becomes much closer. And so I think all of us knew we were trying to overcome things, and we did overcome things. So that kind of set the tone. Did I ever think I was going to last or stay anywhere for as long as I have? No. I mean, I didn't know when the end would be, but I figured, everybody moves on. Everybody moves to the next position. But as we went through the years and the budget improved slowly, ever so slowly, then I realized Long Beach is all the other things people said too. First, I was getting great experience. I was having success. We were doing it with very little, which kind of gave you a sense of pride.
Yeah.
And that we were, getting All-Americans, and we were getting conference champions and doing it on a shoestring budget. But, what I found was that Long Beach had great potential. And I could see it. I could really feel that we could be something more special. Would I want to go to a Midwest school where maybe the success was already there and be successful? Yeah, that would be pretty cool. But that would be coming in and walking into a successful situation. But if I stay where I'm at and build something that's my own and that we did together off of whatever resources we had, that feels a little bit better.
Yeah.
And when you do something, when you mold a person who needs developing and you make them into a champion, that feels better than the kid that came out and as a high school state champion was already good too. So, we became a development program, and that's how we did things.
Wow. That's incredible. What a great legacy, too.
Well, there's a little blood, sweat, and tears in there, but
I'm sure.
We've done it. Like I said, it's a village, and there's a lot of people, and we've seen people come and go through the programs over the years. And what's really nice now is there's a lot more stability, and so people don't just come and go. It's not a stepping stone as it once was when things were a lot tougher. So, we are on the better end of things, and the better days are here.
Yeah.
So it does give some longevity to the people that you work with.
Sure. It probably kind of changes those invitations, too, where, they're striving to get in rather than you pulling to get people. And trust me, it'll get better.
That's right.
So have you identified like some particular key values, maybe that even when you're talking with new coaches that can come and be a part of your staff, that you say like, these are my non-negotiables?
Yeah, I mean, the foundational piece is academics, and academics are, the first and foremost. So
Great.
We can talk all you want about winning championships. We can talk about those things too, and we will have that conversation. But, we need to be prepared to do everything we can to see the student be successful in the classroom. And what that means at an institution like Long Beach State, where every major is impacted, where it requires a GPA, it requires admissions standards, it requires, so many different levels of success prior to even getting into a major, that once they get in the major, sometimes those majors aren't exactly cooperative with our schedules.
Wow.
And so we have to be prepared to go the extra distance. We will, work out at different times a day with the athletes, even if it's just one, to see that they still get the coaching and the nurturing that they need, that they deserve, that they came for, while, it may take away more time from our day to do the other things. And so that way they can still continue to choose their major, because there are a lot of programs that will say, well, you want that major, well, that major has classes that fall during practice time. Sorry, you can't do it. And you think about it, basketball. How do you run a play and learn how to run the zone or whatever it may be with only half your guys on the court? You can't do that, and you can't create that game environment. So it's understandable why that gets done. In track, you have a little more flexibility because it's not as much a team sport per se, although we work on the team sport feel. Now we can go out and we can actually, give them the individualized help they need, which never hurts. It's only better for them, but it does kind of take its toll. It's a bit of a sacrifice for the coaches, but it's a worthwhile one, and none of us complain too much about it.
What kind of numbers are you talking about? Like how many athletes and how many coaches are guiding them? So
we have 105 athletes on our team, and that number can go up and down year to year, but that's our present number. We have full-time coaches, myself, our sprints and hurdles coach, our distance coach, and then we have part-time coaches that we, jointly fundraise for to help, give them some stability, and it works out pretty well because one of them is working on his master's and the other one has a full-time job elsewhere teaching. So, they come in after they're doing the other things they do, and then they help our program. And so one coaches multis events and jumps, the other one coaches throws, and then we have some volunteer coaches. So all in all, we have, I think, around 10 coaches who assist our program. That's on the coaching side. Then you have your academic support, you have, other sports psych that all help out too.
Well, I love that you introduced that. I would love to hear, when was sports psych first introduced to you? Was that on your radar even as a high school athlete?
So, yes, and yet it wasn't talked about as much. Now, this is maybe where my dad, my mom had a little more influence in talking about those kind of things. My dad even suggested that I do ballet when I was in high school, which, that was the last thing I was going to do. How embarrassing, right?
It's a question of pride.
Yeah, a little bit there. But, ways to get better. And there were things going on with NFL players doing ballet. There were others who were, kind of getting into the sports psych side of things. And so I think, even some of my research and book report topics, I started kind of getting into that a little bit. But it was a new world, it felt like. I mean, it seemed like the information then, was more limited than it is now. When I went to San Diego State, actually while I was in junior college, I was going to go psychology, and I applied to San Diego State under psychology, sports psych. And that was one of the directions I was going. But then as I learned things and found other interests and other topics, I became more interested in other areas. But one of my favorite classes was a sports psych class that I had. And we read books like The Inner Game of Tennis, talking about how to strategize or even psych out your opponent, through very simple techniques. And that to me was a very intriguing thing. And then I saw things being applied. I saw how certain athletes responded in situations, and it became even more interesting to me. I chose a different path and went into the coaching role more with, my education, and what I finished up with was a coaching emphasis. But the sports psych was a big piece of it, and part of the foundational part of that major too. So it wasn't like I wasn't able to still get that information, doing a coaching area. So it all ties in, it's hand in hand. As an athlete, I always felt I had advantages. So I never felt like somebody had to show me how to compete hard or to be confident. And so to me, having the tools to communicate that, to articulate it, was the challenge, because nobody taught it to me. It was more innate.
Okay.
And so I wanted to be able to find a way to articulate that with our student athletes, because as a head coach, I can't be good at just one thing. I have to do a lot of things and have balance. And as a coach, you can't just coach technique and be successful. So the sports psych is where you get that advantage, where you take, a successful or a potential out of somebody and you bring it out. So
that sounds very gratifying.
In the years, recently, the evolution, we've seen and utilized, students in the master's program of sports psych at Long Beach State, and it's been very helpful. Just a little bit before that, we hired the professor who taught that, Kevin Sverduk, and he helped tremendously. We actually brought him on trips. We had him give speeches to our team, the pre-night prep speech, before the championship, that kind of thing. And so I was doing a lot of learning. I was doing a lot of note-taking.
Yeah.
These are all things you think about, but how do you articulate it? And so he gave us a map. And then from that map, we kind of built on it. And so the evolution for me was, the old adage, great coaches, or good coaches borrow, great coaches steal. And so, we were beginning to now steal information, what makes somebody successful, what works. And I think you even brought it up earlier in our personal conversation that sometimes mistakes help teach us things too.
Absolutely.
And so there are times when you're learning from both sides of it, what's successful and what doesn't work. And although there's these maps, often we create our own hybrid. What works for me or what's working with this individual might be different than another individual. So we're always building, we're always changing. It's never the same.
Yeah.
As much as we want it to be, and there are certain foundational principles we follow, there's still differences. And so, that's the art that we, find ourselves in trying to do with coaching is, how to kind of, paint this picture that works.
Yeah. I found it really important for an athlete to raise their self-awareness of, they know how good it feels when they're performing at their best and what it feels to really achieve, and that stuff doesn't happen by accident. So maybe I'm curious, how are you able to kind of read, been thinking a lot about how to phrase this question. So you have a really enormous team, much bigger than most sports, and you want to build team cohesion and an atmosphere where people build and encourage each other. Yet so much of your sport is placed on the individual and their individual performance. So in those Kevin Sverduk's speech that pumps up the team as a whole, not everybody has the same zone of energy level that they need when they're going in. Is there a way that you tailor your coaching to that individual, or do you just kind of give them space to find that?
Well, I think that the latter does apply, giving people space to find it. There are even differences between genders. There's differences between event groups. You don't treat, in football, you don't treat the linebacker the same way you treat the quarterback.
Sure.
There's a different mentality. Distance runners eat salad more than they eat steak, but my throwers, I can never feed my team at one restaurant. So there's no cookie cutter, but there are commonalities.
Okay.
And so you work with those commonalities. And so, distance, you go to Soup Plantation, throwers, we're going over here to, the Angus steak place, and everybody's happy. but it's really hard to please everybody.
That's a perfect analogy.
Certainly not easy to apply things the same way to each individual. So, yeah, you have to read people, and reading people, you have to get to know them over time. You have to watch them. We just had our inter-squad meet last weekend, and I got to learn a lot about, some of our student athletes, the way they competed. And so that gives me now something to build off of in my coaching with them, because on a day-to-day practice basis, I can see things a certain way and how they interact and how they do things. But you put them in a competitive situation, the mind changes, and not always for the best. So having those opportunities to compete are teaching opportunities for us too, things to learn from. So I don't know if I answered your question directly.
No, but you definitely did. That knowing that it can't be a one-size-fits-all, but when you can build on those commonalities, then those are the things that probably bring a team together so that they're rallying for each other.
Yeah, and something I wanted to point out from what you said, very, very important, is culture. And so creating a culture, and the way I've liked to do things is we have subcultures. And we have a common culture we're aiming towards, but creating a culture within each event group. So again, kind of like I said, the quarterbacks kind of have their way of thinking, the running backs think their way in football. These are things that people understand, the football terms. In track, the throwers are definitely different than the distance kids. The sprinters are different than the jumpers. And so even within the jumpers, I have high jumpers, different mentality. Triple jumpers, different mentality. Pole vaulters, way different mentality. And so, working with those differences and the characteristics presents challenges. But when you start to take pride in those subcultures and you create pride within those subcultures, it changes everything for us. And so some people may say, oh, you're very individual. And it's so funny because we think of ourselves completely different. We think we're very much about the team. And not always is individual good, but often individual is great. It's just that what we try to do is build it in small pieces and small compartments, and then we put the puzzle together.
Yes.
And so when the puzzle comes together and you have this complete product, then you have that team success. And when you have the team success and everybody realizes they contributed and built that, then you have the overall culture. And so when we won our team championship in 2006, I gave the speech the night before over dinner with the team. And I said, you guys are going to win this thing. And after we did win it, I had athletes come up to me and say, Coach, we didn't believe you. And I was like, well, if you didn't believe me, how did you do it? But ultimately, we were just ready for it. We were ready to win. But because we had not won in so long, it was the getting over that hump.
Wow.
So when we won, then those that were returning had an expectation to win again. And so it was 2 years. We were second the next year, then we won, then we were second the next year, then we won, then we were second again the next year, then we won. And everybody began to think, this is just what it's like to be a 49er, to be at Long Beach State, is you're going to win if you're in the sport of track and field.
Wow.
And so we went on a streak from 2013 to 2016 where we won 4 years in a row, and we very much wanted that 5 in a row. And, injuries, things like that, prevented us, and good competition also prevented that from happening because we had some great competitors, great schools to go against. And I always feel that great competition makes us better, so I never want to shy from that.
Great.
But at the same time, the kids really believed. And then we went 2 years without winning, and that's the first time since I've been here that we went 2 years in the men's program. We didn't win in 17 or 18 on the men. And it was like, okay, we got to reshape this again. We got to kind of remind them what they can do. And so last year's team was fantastic. They, in every way, shape, or form, did what needed to be done and was necessary. And there were a few guys in there that kind of led that to create that culture. And we came out on the successful end. Now, completely different side, the women's side. But go back to 2006.
Yeah.
Not having won a championship, in the history of the program in the Big West Conference, that was a bigger task. And so, I will have to say that probably one of my most rewarding moments as a coach was winning the Women's Big West Conference Championship. Not just because it was a lot of work, and it was a lot of time waiting for it to happen, because there were many missed opportunities that we had along the way. But it was the gratification of seeing them enjoy the success. And to see them celebrate something is kind of more special when you work for something hard and you achieve it than it is to have it handed to you. And so they had to do all the work. They grinded it out. And we didn't have a lot of resources. So, there were some people that did their share of the battle and lifted or carried the team.
Wow.
But ultimately, we all got to share in that experience, regardless of whether, they had scored a point. So when you kind of break through the ceiling and you get there, now the expectation begins. Now we're looking at winning the next championship, and we know it can be done.
Wow.
So our success that we've had has been building off of the knowledge that we are successful.
Yeah.
And the, perception, it's not really perception, but the perception is very important. And so when we talk to our athletes, we talk about expectation, not about, we want to, try this. This is what we're going to do, and we're going to go out and we're going to do it this way, or you're going to do it like this.
Yeah.
And you talk to them differently.
Well, it's almost like it's tangible for you and not yet for them. But because it's tangible for you, you're like, I can carry this tangible feeling. Now get on board.
It's an interesting thing to note that most of the athletes that come to our program have not been on a championship team. So you always want that. You always want to bring in where somebody has that expectation where they've succeeded at it. And for our 2006 team, we were able to pull together enough people out of community colleges and other successful programs that we were able to get some people that were kind of hungry. They tasted it and they won it. And that kind of kick-started it for us. But even our recent teams now, don't have a lot of, coming in as champions. But then to have that first experience here, because they know they're coming here for that and that expectation, it's a motivator. It really, does give them something to work towards with a purpose.
Wow. That's incredible to hear how it builds and how it's such a moving target, too. That you're always working with new people, and you have some that are existing and maybe carry some of the good and some of the bad, and the new people come in, and you're always having to adjust and adapt and form. I'm really curious about other forms of feedback and evaluation that you use in shaping as you do, because having the wins and the titles is a different type of feedback. But what is the more immediate feedback? I don't know, is it maybe daily or weekly, or how are you judging, like, this is progress? My athletes might not feel it yet, but progress is happening.
Well, I would say, it's not something we talk about all the time, but we do have this discussion multiple times throughout the year. If I were to ask you to go out and build a fence, what would you need? What resources would you have to have? Well, you need some wood, and you need a nail, and you need a hammer, and those are your tools. You have your tools, and then you have the product. And in the case with trying to develop an athlete to be successful or to have success and to achieve certain things, we talk about our toolbox. And so you don't want to have an empty toolbox. You want to put as many tools in there as possible. So, the one tool might be technique, the other tool may be nutrition, the other technique might be sleep, or the tool may be sleep. It could be a number of things, and sports psych being one of them too. And so we talk about having those tools as a foundational piece, and how many tools can you put in your toolbox? How many skills can you put in there? Because the more you have in your toolbox, the more prepared you are to build success. And so it's relatable. People kind of understand that. And so every once in a while we'll just, reference that. Are you putting a new tool in your toolbox? Are you getting something taken care of? And even when we do our mental prep before a meet, we talk about not just a perfect jump or a perfect throw or a perfect, start. How did you overcome conditions that day? Just think about it. There's a headwind, and you're going to run into a headwind. The immediate thought is, well, I'm going to run slow today because the wind's working against me. So, okay, you're going to run slow today, but can you be the fastest person running in these conditions? You know, can you overcome that? You know, what if it's raining? Nobody likes to run in the rain, especially in California. You know, we're not used to it. So, you know, we had a meet last year where it just rained and rained and rained. It was our home meet. Everybody expected us to cancel, delay, any of that stuff. Nope, we're not. We're going to run right through it, because when we go to Oregon for our national championship, or Texas, or wherever it may be, Kansas the year before, we had tornadoes.
Wow.
You know, you're going to have to perform in all conditions. And by the way, you don't like your lane? Let's get over that, okay?
Yeah.
Because, you know, just give us a lane and we'll run in any of them and we'll be successful because you expect to be. And, you know,
Good life lesson, honestly.
you know, and I have great coaches who, you know, embody this. They've even, you know, taught all of us, you know, better ways to approach life or look at things. And so, you know, as a team, we're, you know, collectively even learning from each other to get to where we need to get to. But it's, you know, so we tell our kids, okay, now see yourself overcoming that adversity.
Love it.
Are you prepared to overcome that adversity? Because the first time you think about it is the morning you wake up and you're thinking, it's raining, it's going to be a bad day. You're defeated.
Right.
So you have to be prepared to wake up, and whatever condition there is, to say, I'm going to overcome this. So these are things that we talk about, and there's so many more, you know, areas to develop in sports psych, but, you know, it has everything. Attitude has everything to do with success.
Yeah.
And so it's only a beginning point, and we build off it.
That's awesome. I feel like you're offering them a lot of easy to relate to, understandable concepts. Do you end up actually checking on them, or is it kind of their freedom to pick up or take on whether way they wanted to track their self-talk or imagery or these different types of mental skill sets? Like, they can continue developing, or do you have a way of checking, like,
yeah, you can
are you
continue
writing
to
this
develop.
down?
A lot of them don't write it down. You know, I have one athlete right now that writes things down, which is great. But, you know, a lot of them just, you know, absorb it and take it with them. And then it becomes so routine, you know, that every Friday we're going to go through this, you know, mental check and go through a rehearsal that, you know, I think not a lot has to be said.
Okay.
Probably need to say more than I do, though. But, you know, with our lead team that's out there that works with them, that come and observe practice, occasionally even travel with us, they are kind of, I look at them as the expert. You know, you be the one to connect with them or to talk to them, or, and then sometimes I'll go up to that person, you know, the lead, and I'll say, okay, watch this person and watch how they respond to it. And then, you know, these are things we're working on, or this is where their mental state is right now. So will you please go up and approach them afterwards and talk to them?
Nice.
But in a way where it's not me saying it. So,
Sure.
But I give them a little background, they understand, they go in, and then they take it from there. And then, but they use their tools, which they have more of than I do, and they're the expert, they're the coach now, you know, for the brain. So we always say the most important 6 inches, you know, in any event, any sport, and anything you do is, you know, that between your ears. And so if we get that part right, everything else kind of follows.
Absolutely. That's really cool. Do you feel like getting a read on your athletes has become a little easier, or do you just have to kind of take it as it comes?
No, I think it has become easier, but it does come with time. You know, it does come with attentiveness, and you know, in a meet situation, it's a 3-ring circus. You know, you don't always see the aftermath. There are times when I'm watching a jump and they jump, and then I run to the other side of the field to watch a different jumper. I don't get to see how their body language is, you know, between jumps. But that's hopefully where the sports psych person comes in. Not all times do we have that sports psych with us. So, you know, we may miss a thing or two, but when we understand tendencies, you can almost predict it.
Wow.
And so, you know, well, I know how to handle that and address it because we've addressed it before. So you come back and you ask, like, okay, so where are we at with things here? You know, did this happen? Did that happen? Or, you know, mentally, do you feel like you're ready? And creating routines is a big part of getting them ready, but sometimes you have to remind people. So it's not a given. We know that it's not always going to be what they're doing because they have to be reminded for it.
Sure. And you've created an environment where there's repeated exposure, there's good support. So in that moment when they perhaps buy in or that light comes on where they go, that's that thing that I need to do, they're able to access it. At least they have some of the articulated language and some of the tools. And I think it's really neat, too, when you do have athletes that have really bought into bringing themselves into their optimum zone of performance, that when they buy in and they articulate it, I think it can spread like wildfire.
It can.
When it's not coming from a coach, it's coming from their teammates where they're like, you need to meditate. You're going to feel a lot better when you arrive at competition.
Well, I will say that, having the sports psych group out there, it takes a little bit off my shoulders. It does allow me to focus on some other things, which I think is always good. I mean, you want that. But I feel like with a sports psych person, they can be safe as well. Maybe they could be reacting to the fact that I missed their last jump and they're just really angry. Coach didn't see my last jump.
And they can't just come up and say that to you?
Yeah, you don't come up to me and say that, but you say it to the sports psych person. But the sports psych person, they're trained. They're not going to just throw them under the bus either. So, I have to figure that part out on their own. But that isn't always necessary because they can sit there and address it on the spot. And they can, say, well, here's why or whatever, but it's not personal, or they might just make them answer their own question.
Absolutely.
So
that's really powerful.
So it's, there's techniques that they're using to help them overcome those things. And I don't always need to know. I don't always need to know. But I think a common phrase sports psych will use with their student athletes that are out there is, have you told coach? Have you told coach what you're feeling? So now it's kind of put back on them to do that if they really feel it's important. And then we can discuss it and they'll probably find out that, things aren't as they perceive sometimes. So,
wow. Well, I would, I don't know if this puts you on the spot at all, but can you tell me like a particular career high?
Ooh, gosh, I wish I was more prepared for that one because my 32 years of experience, there have been many. I think along the way there's been the highs that are then another high comes and another high comes. I would say that, probably the first major high, there were a lot of them, a lot in there, but my first major high was winning a national championship with a pole vaulter. The athlete at that time was coming to our program. They hadn't even made the high school state championship. And they were from my hometown, so through a connection, we were able to get that athlete here. And by the way, he chose us because of our success and my background, but also because we had a good sports psych program at Long Beach State, or a good psychology program.
Sure.
So that was a major he was very interested in, and so he chose us for all the good reasons. But developing him into a national champion and then seeing that happen was, a very special moment for me. And then, you go to the next step, it's winning the first conference championship. And then it's the next one, and then it's a four-peat. There's all those, that come along the way. But a lot of those high moments, probably I'd say the women's, championship in 2018 was a peak, and it certainly accomplished a major goal, absolutely a major goal in my time as a coach, that I wanted to see that happen. And so, that to me was probably one of the best. But I will even say last year's championship on the men, not just that they did it, but how they did it and how much team camaraderie they showed and how much support they gave to one another visibly. We were just in a whole nother level, just a whole nother level. We started out in a very important event for us, and the guys just killed it. And you thought, okay, so we got a little break there. We're down. We know that we're going to have to, get someplace and be successful in a lot of events to overcome kind of what we thought of as our deficit.
Okay.
And the guys never let up. They put the gas pedal down, and then they just accelerated. And we just blew through everything. And the one that gave me the chills was our steeplechaser. He came out and he was third ranked in the conference. Not only did he blow doors through the last, lap to accelerate past and take the championship, he broke our school record, he qualified for the NCAA meet. But this is a kid that had just had so many ups and downs in life.
Yeah.
And then also throughout the season that, to see this young man who, lacked the confidence at times, to feel the power and then take it. Because even in the race, he was getting beat pretty handily. And then he said there was a moment there that he made a decision.
Wow.
And, it was a little bit of a religious moment,
Yeah.
but he just felt power and strength and a belief in himself that he could make it happen. And he felt he was guided for that. And then he took the reins and went. And that's powerful. And to see the way he did it, how he did it, is, again, more important than what he did. Mm-hmm. And that was a big rush. And for me, very much, the chills down the spine, and that lasted for a long time. Maybe one of the better moments I've ever seen.
How incredible to get to share these, transformative moments with people. I mean, you're probably in the job, your dream job, if you continue to set goals and achieve them. And I mean, you might be doing this for another 25 years.
My wife might have something to say about that, but I will say that, as much as, kind of going full circle, as much as things were not easy early on and we didn't have a lot of the resources, but there was potential here that I saw, I've always felt that Long Beach State is my dream job.
Yeah.
And, never lose sight of that. This is the place where not only did I want to be and where I've stayed, but I can honestly say it wasn't a place where a lot of people would want to be in those early years, but Long Beach State is a place that people would want to be at now. Mm-hmm. And to leave it in that kind of shape, better than when I took over, feels good.
Yeah.
And I think that, Long Beach has made a name for itself. We're on the map, and people would definitely associate good track and field with our sport. Good track and field, at our university.
Yes.
So, I kind of got a little off topic there, but I would say that, having these moments, having these highs are pay value. Mm-hmm. It's really what we're in it for.
Yes.
At the very end. And you just don't get that working behind a desk.
Mm-hmm.
You don't get that, doing something else. But when you're building something and then you have a finished product and it came out the way you wanted it, sometimes even better, and then it affects people's lives in ways where you see their belief and their energy and togetherness that comes from it, that it wasn't just one person but all of them collectively. There's nothing more rewarding that I can imagine ever experiencing.
Incredible. I love it. I know you are a father. Are your kids athletes too?
Yes. So, but they're my babies. So they're my babies first. I have two daughters. One just started high school. Mm-hmm. Everything's new for me. This is my first time having a child in high school. And, and both being daughters, absolutely I'm the protective dad. Mm-hmm. And so, but at the same time, you asked that question about my father and how much he was trying to guide me and stuff. And, this is their journey. Yeah. And so as much as we have suggestions and we have, our ideas of how to do things, ultimately it's their experience. And so, yeah, we nudge a little bit and then we find ourselves like, we got to back off. We just need to let them do their thing. And so I've never found that even if I win a battle, that I won the battle. Yeah. If I'm making them do something they don't want to do. So yeah, they might do it, but it's not necessarily there's a win there. So it's very important. And I think, I learned a lot of this through coaching is they got to want to do it. It's only enjoyable if they want to do it. So. Very cool. I just recently saw that commercial, the 90-second ride, and, it's the parent who gets in the car and the, kid gets in from soccer practice and that, how it is. I mean, every parent does it. So, hey, I saw you do this in practice. I didn't like that. Or, you start criticizing and, you just see the head start to go down and it's not fun anymore.
Right.
And so, we always have to be careful how the language we use and the things we ask. And you get to a point where, you just learn to not bring up things.
Sure.
And you can sense it too. Some people just don't want to talk about it.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, that was a great game. You did a great job.
Right.
Fantastic. And then you can say, okay,
Mm-hmm.
fine.
And if they were looking for your criticism, they might ask, like, what could I have done better there? And you say, well, since you mentioned it.
So you know what? You talk about all these techniques and things we learn. And I'm still learning, especially as a parent, because it's all new to me.
Mm-hmm.
And when it's your own kid, you definitely don't want to mess it up. So.
Oh, yeah. It's a high price. But I like how you say, too, that you're welcoming to other mentors like your parents were for you, that your coaches were extremely instrumental in helping you to guide your passion in life. And it sounds like you're coaching for all the right reasons.
Yeah, thanks. And it's also kind of nice, too, when my daughters are out there getting good coaching, that I know that there isn't much of a role we have to play. You know, that they're good hands. So it's important.
I know that I definitely was interested in how you support the whole team and the team cohesion, and then how you're able to support the individual. And I really appreciated how you talked about the worth of that individual is so valuable, because those are the pieces that make up the whole. And sometimes I feel like that's forgotten in a lot of sports, and I really love that you brought that out. Like, having that investment in the individual, I think, is huge, because that truly is what makes the whole. And how can you have that team cohesion if you don't have people that really believe in it?
Yeah, thank you. Again, something I was told very early on is that the athlete meets the sport at the coach. And so I'm a strong believer that when, you have an athlete on your team, the presentation, the energy that you give to it is so important, so vital to seeing them be successful. And if we're just hard-nosed all the time and the joy is not there, I would say I'm a little bit more of a goofy coach. I think in an interview I did a couple of years ago, they said, what actor would you see yourself being more like? And I said, Tom Arnold.
Oh.
And very unexpected, but just kind of a little goofy, a little off. I try to keep it light out there, because there's enough seriousness to go around for all of us, that sometimes it's just better to just be get our mind off things and kind of just, get into the moment, and have fun while you're doing it.
Yeah.
So, my approach is much different than even some other coaches on my staff, who are very successful using their methods of getting there. But the bottom line is we're all trying to get to the same place, and whatever tools we use to get there, that they be effective. And
more tools in the toolbox.
Yeah, and I've got a coach on my staff that only had experience really as coaching in high school, and was a motivational speaker. And so I knew that this was the right person for our staff, and so hired them to come on and to watch her grow, but to also put to use her skills that she knew as a motivational speaker. Now she's, serving on committees, she's doing all kinds of stuff, and she's now a 2-time U.S. Olympic coach.
Wow.
And it's rewarding to see her be herself, be her own person, but then to pass on and share, what she knows, the knowledge. And it's taught me a lot, but it's also taught our student athletes a lot. And even our department, I feel is more cohesive because of her and, what she has to offer. And it's just a beautiful thing, when you have the right environment and the right people who are there for the right reasons, and they have something to share, if it's a tool or a skill or whatever it may be to improve us and to make us better, like she has. It's been, it's a great journey. And where we go to and what's around the corner, we don't know, but it feels like it's going to be good.
Well, I love that you mentioned that, because so much of the focus is on this nest with, your little baby birds in it, and you're ready to see them fly. And it's not really looking at the development of all the other pieces of that puzzle that are working on the nutrition and the sports psych and the coaching, all these different pieces where that person's developmental journey can also be an inspiring to everybody at every level. That's really cool that everyone can reciprocate those benefits through trying to build one another.
Yes.
So I'm going to just pull the e-brake real quick. What do you do when your team has an energy vampire?
Oh, energy vampires. I love that term. Okay, that's a good one. So we've addressed this, and and I think, I'm trying to think here because this is stuff we talk about, and now my tongue is tied. The energy vampire and overcoming that, first of all, it's got to be culture. You have to, have more good apples than bad apples, to be successful. And a lot of people say that one bad apple can spoil the bunch, and that's
Yes.
true. But I also feel like a lot of good apples can change a bad apple, and you don't allow that conversation to happen, that you shut that down. So if you have people who are trained and understand what an energy vampire does, and then you don't give them any fuel,
Yeah.
by not being a listener or not allowing them to use the language or that thought process or whatever it may be and share that and spread it, then you can nip that in the bud. So there are techniques for that too. And but again, it comes back to the culture. And
Yeah.
if you have a strong enough culture, and I've always believed that, to make my job easier, you recruit the right people. If you have the right people with the right attitudes when they come in, your work's a lot easier.
Sure.
Because we're not really in the business as much as you might think of changing people. We're trying to change lives, but people are who they are and how they act. And if they're willing to and receptive, they might accept the information you give and work on changing that, but that's a choice. It's not automatic. Just because I said it, it doesn't mean it's going to happen. So if people are making the right choices and, like you said, they believe, they buy in, that's the environment you want to have. And so we're very protective of that. You
Yeah.
have to be protective of your environment. And if you don't have the right environment, then you got the hard job of making changes, and people fight change.
Yeah.
People fight that. So, make your life easier. Just go get the right people, and then really work at it to build it right from the start. And we had to this year. We replaced 50% of our team.
Wow.
This year, and we thought this is going to be a really tough task. So we said, returnees, you're outnumbered essentially. It's equal, but it's you're trying to bring them on board to something. When we had a couple of broken pieces from last year, we were trying to change, and the fact that they did it, it wasn't solely the leadership. It was the new people coming in. They made it easy, and they actually contributed to that. And the feeling and the vibe on this program right now is very, very good. So
Great. So your returners felt some of that responsibility of creating something special, and the new people added to it.
yes.
Well, that's really great. I've heard you say before that life is all about choices, and I like too where you're kind of talking about giving those energy vampires a choice. Like, you can get on board or you don't have a place here.
Yeah, and we'll say it.
It's empowering.
Well, we really, I don't want to say we don't mean it. We would just rather see them change than remove somebody. Some people remove themselves. They just find that they don't have the environment supporting their way of thinking.
Yeah.
And then they just move on. It's kind of a quiet departure. And so, that's kind of the best scenario, that comes with it is if you don't give them the fuel, then they'll just kind of die.
That makes so much sense.
So that's how you deal with an energy vampire is you just give them no fuel.
Awesome.
Or
Well, we've talked
say
about
we don't let them eat.
these the positives, the potential negatives, how you respond to that. Your wisdom today has been really special and valuable. I have enjoyed learning from it, and I think our listeners will also enjoy this. So thank you for joining us on the Game 90-10, where we talk about how much of the game is 90% mental, 10% getting that performance. But I appreciate, too, where you're coming from when you can teach a technique and really show someone how to thrive. That's fantastic.
Yeah. Well, thank you for having me. It's been a great pleasure.
Thank you. Thank you so much. All right, and we'll close it out.